on every week on Sundays around 7:30. I'm a little early this week, 7:30 British Standard Time. I'm a little early this week, but I wanted to jump in and get this live going because I was kind of really excited about what I wanted to talk about this week. I wanted to dig into the plants that I have behind me, pull out some that I haven't talked about yet, and just kind of discuss some of these house plants. If you don't know me, if it's your first time here, hi, Mac, and I love house plants. I love outdoor plants. I love gardening, and I've kind of liked it all my life. Since I was a kid, I've really been into gardening. I've been into horticulture, and I've studied it in school, and I went to school for biology, ecology, environmental science. And this is just something that I really find very exciting to kind of participate in. And it's a great activity. It's a great hobby. If you want to get into plants, I highly suggest you go get a plant, learn about it, provide what that plant needs to grow, live, and thrive, and then grow it. Okay, so this week, what I want to talk about? Well, I want to jump into aloe. And here is the aloe that I repotted. Oh, this has to be about 6-7 months ago, maybe even longer, maybe getting closer to a year. And I want to just clean this plant up a little bit. I have 2 different aloes here, and these have been doing really well. How do you know your plant is doing really well? Well, when you see this is, I didn't get it out in time, but this is the stem where this plant has bloomed, which means that this plant was provided enough of the proper growing conditions for it to bloom. So we just clean this plant up a little bit. That's what I actually wanted to do. Talk about it, clean it up. I love aloe. Now, a lot of people use them for various purposes, medicinal purposes, or in healthcare, or with like facial cleanings and things of that sort. I don't cut any of these leaves off. Aloe actually has a chemical in it that can be poisonous. And to some people, the aloe itself is, especially aloe vera, right? That can be poisonous to some people. It's a skin irritant. So be careful if you go to cut into eating on these plants, and I highly suggest you do not decide to chew on one of these leaves. It's a succulent, which means that it comes from a tropical, semi-tropical, arid environment where the plant doesn't need to get a lot of consistent moisture. It stores a lot of moisture in these nice chunky leaves, and that's what the aloe plant is all about. It's all about being a succulent, all about these nice chunky leaves. But this one bloomed quite a while ago. You can see these, look at these, they just popped it off. This is a stem from when it bloomed, and unfortunately I didn't even notice that it had bloomed. Who is watching from window behind? That is a very big yard out behind, and there are some deer that live in the hedgerow behind it. Okay, I think that's the only people that's out there. I hope that's the only people that's out there. I hope there's no one else running around out there. Yep, just cleaning this up. But aloe has a lot of very particular conditions if you want to grow it. It grows originally from, as I was mentioning, tropical, semi-tropical, arid environment. This one's not coming loose. I might cut that one off. Dry environments. It's a succulent. Doesn't need to be watered a lot. This one is planted in a semi-hydroponic pot. You notice almost all my pots that I have here, semi-hydroponic pots, which is, it's a pot within a pot. This second top pot, which is in here, I don't want to pick it up and show you because I don't want to disturb the plant roots. But down at the bottom is a bit of a reservoir. It can hold water down there. And there's this meter right there. See that kind of bouncing up and down? In here, this meter tells you the water level at the bottom of the pot, so you know how much moisture is in the pot at all times. I really love, I'm a huge advocate for semi-hydroponic pots. I love these pots. They can be a bit pricey. This one, I bought this one, shipped this one over from the US. I'll show you the brand. There it is. You can see the brand, shipped it over from the US. I think I originally bought it off Amazon. It does pretty good. I needed one that was a little larger, and the ones here in the UK tend to be a little bit smaller. But ship this over. Let's clip this out. There we go. And potted this up, and it's doing really well. If you can notice, there's actually 2 different plants in here growing side by side, which is great. It's fine, not a problem. If they continue to grow and And if I feel like they need a bit of space, then I know I can separate this and put this into 2 separate pots, and I'll have 2 separate plants. All right, just wanted to clean that up a little bit. And I'm not really concerned because they don't tend to have a lot of pests. I had a problem with mealybugs here a little while back. Didn't touch the aloe at all. But this is a spray bottle, which I have some 70% isopropyl alcohol in here. And what I like to do is just give it a nice little spritz, just in case. I mean, there's clearly like some little spiders because there's little webs here. I haven't touched this pot in a while, but just a little spritz of isopropyl alcohol. It's going to dry out really quickly because, you know, alcohol evaporates out. But if there's any insects on that, it'll just kind of knock them back a little bit. But I haven't had any problems with insects on that. Just a little spritz, that is done. And I have some also alcohol pads. I'm not sure I'll need it. What I really like about this particular variety is, you know, you can see the coloration is on the ribs of those succulent leaves. It just kind of goes orange. There's a little orange towards the end of those leaves. It goes orange. And I just love the variegation because it has those lighter green specks all up and down the plant. So I think it's just a really beautiful plant. Not really hard to take care of because they are succulents. They don't need a lot of water. This has a meter in it. What you don't want to do with any succulent or tropical plant or plant that comes from originally an arid environment, arid, you know, it's going to be kind of dry, is you don't want to overwater it. I think what a lot of people would tend to do if they get a succulent is they may overwater it. And so you don't want to do that. Because of how ribbed these are, I don't think I can do much with this pad. I don't think I need it actually. Just kind of get in here. There's a little bit more in there. I just want to clip out. I don't think I need to do much. But this plant I think is in great condition. It's very healthy. It is very happy. A little more. And what I also like to do before I put this back on the shelf is I have some house plant. This mist the leaves, shine, kind of a little bit of shine. It's a little trick that, you know, for house plants, you just get a little mist and that's about it, you know. So this plant is in great condition. This is a beautiful aloe. Let's set this one over to the side and let's take a look at the other one. And here's another one. Now the problem that I had with this aloe here is fine. I'm gonna try to move this over here, get it off the screen. This is my second aloe and it needs to be watered because, as I mentioned before, it has that meter and you can't even see the bottom of it. It needs to be watered. Now the problem I had with this particular aloe, I set it in a window and it was starting to grow because plants will grow towards the light. It wasn't getting enough light. So the plant started to grow tilting this way. Now, how do you stop that from happening? Well, if I had paid closer attention and periodically about once a week, once every other week, taken that plant and just kind of turned it. So as it grows and tilts and then you turn it, right? You just a little turn just like that every week. As the plant is trying to grow in this direction, you keep turning it, the plant will be more upright. The other thing you can do is what I did do, which is I bought a specific grow light because this succulent and this succulent, I talked about the growing conditions, they need a lot of light. So if you want to have a succulent, especially like this aloe, the environments they come from are drenched in light. It needs a lot of light. This one hasn't bloomed, the other one has bloomed. This one hasn't bloomed, but what I did was I bought a grow light and I set it directly over this aloe here, and over time it's already started to straighten back up because again it was tilted much more than this. The whole plant was kind of growing this way. That's not good. So I got it, put it where I wanted it, grow light directly above it, and the plant now is starting to tilt back. And why is it taking so long? It's an aloe. It's very thick. I mean, these leaves are chunky. Look at these chunky leaves, right? So these chunky leaves on this plant, they don't move very much. It's a very stiff plant. It's like a very hard, you see it's very, very stiff. And so when you want that to grow in a different direction, it's just gonna take time. You can see it has this little slant. Over time, with that grow light above it, it is straightening back up. And that will be really great for me. All right, but I do want to clean it up a little bit. You can see some of these little bottom leaves. There's one right, where is that? Right here. Just take that out. There's one right here. There's another one. Just get in there and they just, oh, they're released. And that's just a leaf that dried up. And you can see, the interesting thing is, as chunky as these leaves are, again, the leaves store moisture for the plant. But when it dries out, look how thin that is. Just a normal dried out leaf. When it dries out, not as chunky. But I love this plant. Aloe is really great. And I love the chunkiness of these succulent leaves. I have several other succulents as well. I don't exclusively grow one particular type of plant. I have a lot of different plants because I love that variety. The variety is that it's in the plant kingdom. Is it even a kingdom? Well, I mean scientifically. But the variety in plants, I just absolutely love the variety that's there. All right, and just want to wipe this down a little bit using one of those alcohol pads. Just get in there. This one is not as ribbed. I mean, this little serrated on the edges of these leaves, but I could just kind of get in there a little bit and wipe this one out. Again, it needs to be watered. You don't have to fertilize them very often. They grow in dry, arid environments, don't get a lot of moisture. The soil substrate, which I'm growing it in Lechuza pond, it seems to be doing really well with that. This one's kind of, just doesn't clip that off. I don't want to go back to the live part. I just clip back the part that's already dead. Clip that off. More of a visual thing since it's already dead. All right, and just kind of want to wipe these leaves down a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz this also with isopropyl alcohol, just to make sure in case there's anything growing on this, that isopropyl alcohol will take care of that for me. I don't tend to use a lot of hard chemicals. I guess isopropyl alcohol is a chemical, but I don't use a lot of like insecticides and things like that on my plants. I'm not going to tell you I'm necessarily all organic. I am not. If I feel like I absolutely need to do something that's going to be for the benefit of the plant, I will, but I don't tend to have to do that, especially if I see the plant is growing in a really nice fashion like this plant is here. So let's give this a nice little spritz. Just isopropyl alcohol, and really want to get down in the base, because if you're going to have problems with insects, they're not going to be, I mean, they may be hanging out the end, but typically the problem with the insects is going to be deep down in that plant. They love to get down into those spaces in between the leaves. And if you're going to have an insect problem, it's typically going to be there, because that's where the insects are hiding from predators. You know, in a natural environment, they would be in there hiding from predators. A key thing is you have to make sure that you don't get dirt. So if you're potting this up in soil, you have to make sure you don't get soil in there, into those leaves, because that could cause the plant to actually rot if it actually gets soil. Here's a leaf. This one is still a little chunky because it hasn't completely dried out yet, but that one was down on the bottom. I like to take these off. Now in the wild, natural environment, these, as they dry out, can create a bit of a bed. The plant will grow up, leaves die off to the side, and they'll stack on top of each other, could create like a natural mulch around the plant. But in this type of environment, not necessarily. I'll pull those off. That's what I wanted to do here. Get down under here on this other side. Here's another one. Just pull those out of there. They're not necessary. They're not doing anything here. Just kind of getting down in between those leaves. If there are any mealybugs, this will take care of them. I don't see any evidence of mealybugs on this plant right now. There's like one little spot right there. Maybe, I don't think so. But just a little spritzing of isopropyl alcohol. It'll dry off really quickly. I've done this several times with all my plants before and never had a bit of an issue with that. I'm gonna let that dry off now. Okay. So this is my second aloe. Now, if you know aloe vera, which is a limey green colored version of aloe. If you're familiar with that, you see it growing all over the place, and like in garden centers, in some shopping centers, they sell aloe vera. Again, people use it to do all kind of cosmetic things with it. I don't tend to grow aloe vera. I don't have any right now. If I did grow it, I would, if I were to get some, I would do the same thing that I've done with all of these plants, which means I would take it out of the pot, like if it's in a normal little pot, I would take it out and I would repot it, take all that soil off and repot it into some pond. I feel like pond is a perfect substrate for these plants. This is what it looks like this little rocky material. I feel like it's a perfect substrate for these plants that come from a more arid environment. Again, don't overwater these plants. That's one of the key things with succulents that you want to make sure of, that you're always getting that part right. Don't overwater. These will do a little better with underwater, vice overwater. Whatever you do, don't overwater it. You overwater this succulent and it's going to die. Okay, any questions from anyone? Because if you have any questions, just jump in, drop those in comments. I'll answer it. I don't necessarily need to do much else to these plants, but what I would like to do is add just a little bit of mycorrhizal fungi to the soil substrate. Now, I added it when I first put the plant in, but every now and then I like to come back and do it as a little bit of a top dressing, not much. So I have this scoop here, and this is fungi. I poured a little bit out. This fungi will get down into this growing substrate in this pond, and it will grow. And what it'll do is it will connect to the root hairs and provide the ability for the root hairs to uptake more nutrients to support the plant growth. This plant needs about 10 to 12 hours of sunlight, 8 to 10. Really, if you get 10 to 12 is even better, of sunlight per day. You can provide that. This one is really filling up this pot. It's not root bound. It hasn't been in here long enough to be root bound, but if it gets much larger than this, like if I see it going wider than this, where it becomes top heavy and may start to tilt and wobble, then I definitely would consider repotting it. It is doing great. This is one plant. Look at those big chunky leaves. That looks really great. It's doing really good. You can see how it's just filled up that entire pot. And back to this other one here. I want to put a little bit of mycorrhizal fungi around it. Again, it's two separate plants. I want to keep an eye on it as it continues to grow, and if it gets larger, then I may also consider separating this out. But I'm putting this, put that in there. It has already been watered, but I will put a little water on these just kind of to get that fungi down into the substrate a little deeper. I'm just going to mix that in a little bit by hand. And that's gonna do really, really well and increase the viability of the plant. It's gonna grow a little better, take up more nutrients. As far as nutrients, with this semi-hydroponic, what do I tend to do? I don't fertilize very often. I'll show you what I use. Now this is what I blend into my water, which is going to be a liquid seaweed. And I love the liquid seaweed because it has so many micronutrients inside of it. Of course, plants need the big three, potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen. That's what plants need to grow, right? That's the big three. Almost all plants, that's what they need. But just like you as a human will take multivitamins to get those extra little bits into your diet, or eat a very broad variety of foods to pick up those micronutrients that helps you with your growth, seaweed provides those micronutrients. I'm not recommending this brand, I'm just recommending seaweed, liquid seaweed, because it has, I think it's like 70 different elements that are in there that the plants are able to, and they may not need much of it, so I don't use this. I use it pretty sparingly, but just to make sure that those plants are getting all those nutrients, because they're in a trapped environment, right? When you put it in a pot, the only thing that this plant can draw on for nutrients is what you put in the pot with it. So if you don't put it in the pot, it won't have the opportunity to take that and use it to grow. So I love to add a bit of seaweed, liquid seaweed, to all of my water, but I don't do it probably about once a week. I'll add that in, actually not even that often, probably about once a week to every 2 weeks. I add a bit of liquid seaweed to my water that I'm putting into these pots. But I don't water these pots individually very often. Semi-hydroponic pots hold that water, so that goes really well. All right, this is gonna be a bit short this week. Next week, we're going to tackle this. Next week, I'm going to tackle this philodendron. It has been here. It is doing really well. You can see how large it is. It is vining, right? It's a vining, and it is doing wonderful. I have another semi-hydroponic pot about the same size, the actual same size that Aloe is planted in. And next week, what I'll do is I'm going to repot this, put it on a moss pole. I did that with a different. I did that with a different philodendron a couple weeks ago. This philodendron micans, that is doing really great. And I'm going to do it with this one. So next week is going to be philodendron repotting, kind of digging into that. I may get time to do another, we'll see. But I'm definitely doing that next week. All right, if you have any questions or comments, drop those down in the comments at some other point. We didn't grab them on the live, but I do respond to comments on this channel. So if you have any comments later on, you're looking at this, these videos are all replayed. What I do is let YouTube go and does what it do, and YouTube kind of works with those videos, and it just reposts them for me. That's why I love going on live. Repost the videos, I go in, rename it, and they're all up on the channel. So you can go back and look at any past lives. I've covered multiple plant varieties up to this point, and I will continue to do that. And if you have anything specific that you want to know about, I did receive a question about tulips. I planted some tulips back in the fall. So I will have tulips coming up this year. I can talk more about tulips. I'm a little early for tulips now. You can go to some garden centers and pick them up. And so we'll demonstrate that as well. You can make some really great pots with tulips. If you didn't plant them in the fall, you can buy those tulips that are budding out right now. And I'll show you that in a future live. That we'll cover that. We'll do a nice pot with some tulips in it, and then set that outside. All right. So this is the aloes. Wanted to get them cleaned up. I love these guys. They're just beautiful. They're chunky. I love the succulent leaves, and this one is just doing great. The size of it. Again, I'm going to make sure I sit it back under this grow light. Sits directly over it. Straighten this plant up. Yep, I can tell it has a little lean. Straighten this plant up. And make sure I get enough light for this one as well. All right, guys, this is going to be a short live. I just want to go over aloe, get into philodendrons next week, repotting that, and we'll just keep it going. I try to jump on here every Sunday, 7:30 British Standard Time. Have any comments, any questions, drop those down. Let me know. Until next time, guys, take care.